Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. What does it feel like to finally understand your own brain after years of wondering why things seemed harder than they looked for everyone else? For my next guest, receiving a diagnosis as an adult wasn't just a validation, it was a turning point. Today, she's a neurodivergent speaker and coach advocating for empathy, accessibility, and real understanding in the workplace. She uses her lived experience to help others gain clarity and learn how to advocate for themselves at work and beyond. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about her. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. Today, I'm joined with Samantha Kelly. Welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, as I always like to ask my guests, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. You know, this is actually an interview question that I tell a lot of my clients. You should always have kind of a quick answer for. And every time I'm asked, I get a little nervous and I forget my own. Well, I am an ADHD entrepreneur and coach and founder and trainer. But more than anything, at a very human level, I am just somebody who is incredibly passionate about getting the voices behind neurodiversity, getting awareness to grow and to really, besides grow, really begin to touch other people's lives and have other people begin to realize how pervasive neurodiversity is in our communities, in our lives. Somebody who's really passionate about making sure that our voices are heard and that our experiences are understood and that we are welcomed into spaces that maybe we aren't typically welcomed into. Um,
That's such a big thing because a lot of times I think those of us who are neurodivergent don't feel welcome anywhere
right.
because we think so differently and we act differently. And I think people aren't used to how we act and how we react.
hmm And it's a little bit of understanding. I've seen it in my own experiences. I've seen it in the organizations I've worked with. If you have a little bit of insight and understanding, all of a sudden all these light bulbs go off, right? And the conversation no longer becomes, oh, they're different or they're odd or they're weird, they're lazy, crazy, stupid, any of these really unfortunate monikers that seem to go along with neurodiversity. And people begin to go, oh, they're just navigating the world a little differently. Oh, they mean only the best in this situation. Or wow, they are really trying their hardest. Those light bulbs are key.
Now, to start off with, tell me a little bit about you, not the bio version, but the human version.
Human version. Oh, the human version is messy, but aren't we all, right?
Hmm.
The human version is somebody who has been very blessed and lucky to have the support systems that I've needed to navigate my own diagnosis process. I'm a late diagnosed ADHDer. I'm somebody who is navigating other diagnoses and still trying to understand myself in the process. But um, I am just somebody who enjoys learning, enjoys connecting with people. Um, in true ADHD fashion, particularly passionate, particularly maybe a little energetic. I'm an Aries, so I'm a little fiery, if that's fair.
Just like me.
There you go. I am happily married with a dog, and I joke that I'm the neurodivergent in our neurotypical relationship, and I've just been very lucky to have somebody who has been so incredibly understanding and encouraging and supportive as I've figured out more about myself. But I don't know.
I mean, I can tell you stories about my parents dealing with me, or even my own stories of my own ADHD trials and tribulations. Like, I can remember I was doing the dishes, and we have a kitchen island. My mom and I were doing a jigsaw puzzle on,
Oh,
and I turn around and I start working on the puzzle. 10, 15 minutes go by. And I totally forget I was doing the dishes. I turn back around and I realize, oh crap, I was in the middle of putting the dishes away.
Yeah, those little moments, right? They kind of catch us off guard.
I mean, yeah, for those who are listening, if you have ADHD, don't feel like you're alone in this. Every
Mm,
one of us had a bad day or a day where it just, time just slips or you totally forget what you're doing.
yeah. And it's not, if there's one thing that I love to tell people, it's not our quote unquote fault. It does not make us a bad person. We are dealing with a brain that didn't come with an instruction manual. We're playing a deck of cards that nobody taught us the rules to, right? It's
Mm.
as long as we go into things with the best of intentions, right? And just navigate the results as they come, that is what makes us the best person that we can be.
Yeah, as I like to tell people a lot of times is if I say something wrong, it's not because I meant to, it's
Mhm.
because I'm constantly monitoring everything going through my head.
Yeah.
And when you have no filter, when you're autistic, you're trying to monitor everything and you slip. You're human.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those are human moments.
Right. I wish more people outside of the neurodivergent community understood the amount of brain power that it takes to, like you said, monitor what you're trying to say or stay on a task or anything. There's a reason why maybe we're more tired at the end of the day, why we are maybe sometimes more easily distracted or navigating challenges, because our brains are working overtime in ways that maybe others aren't.
Now, what does a good day look like for you now?
Oh, golly. A good day starts with the best cup of coffee, but a good day truly is when I am in my best flow. So maybe that includes a little bit of hyper focus, maybe that doesn't. But really, to me, a good day is a productive day. And let me put a little like asterisk on that. Productive doesn't have to mean that I actually produced a ton of work, right? Or a ton of results. But maybe a productive day for me was I was able to rest an appropriate amount and I was able to make a really great emotional connection with a friend or a family member. It was a day where I feel like I've been able to fill all of my different cups and that my energy has continued to flow. I think we as neurodivergent people are subject to these really big dips in our energy, right? We're drained by a lot of things. We're also energized by a lot of things. And it's managing that flow really well, which I think makes a good day.
Now, what parts of yourself do people usually miss at first glance?
Mm, what do they miss at first glance? I think I do a very good job of hiding how hyperactive my brain is and the deep anxieties that come when your mind is racing. The fact that you are having a conversation with somebody, and like you said, monitoring and managing every word that comes out of your mouth at a level that is exhausting in some ways, or that you are trying to wonder how you're being interpreted and you're trying to read social cues in an unfamiliar or uncomfortable situation. So I think a lot of people miss the fact that even if I look calm and confident on the surface, I'm running and racing pretty rapidly in my head.
Now, you describe yourself as a neurodivergent speaker and coach.
Mhm.
When did that identity really click for you?
That's a great question. I mentioned earlier, I'm a late diagnosed ADHDer. So I found out in my late 20s that the reasons why I felt different, while I felt not aligned with my peers, was because I was operating with a different kind of brain, really. Um, when that all clicked for me at 27, it was this answer that I began to go, oh, okay, so if I think differently, if I manage differently, maybe I'm just also meant for a different path. And so with my diagnosis, I began to speak more frequently about the neurodivergent experience, particularly in the workplace. And I would have people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for finally saying something. I'm ADHD too, or I'm autistic, or I have dyslexia and I have been hiding it or struggling to do so, or nobody understands me. And through these conversations, I began to go, oh my gosh, so not only am I not alone, I'm helping other people feel not so alone in this experience as well. And so over a couple of years and over a couple of conferences and speaking engagements and webinars, right, I began to go, I think this is an opportunity for me to step out and start to make a change. I had been incredibly blessed with a phenomenal boss who was encouraging and supportive and educational and who really wanted to help me thrive as somebody with ADHD in the workplace. And I knew not everybody else had that. So I wanted to take those blessings and pass it on. And so it was my late 20s when that finally clicked. And I said, it's time to do something about this.
And was there a specific moment where things suddenly made sense?
Hmm. For my pathway, it was having a woman begin to, and this sounds terrible, I admit. I started a presentation and I began to talk about the neurodivergent experience, and I began to see a woman begin to cry in my presentation. And she began to say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just my son is neurodivergent. And I've never heard this talked about. And you were putting puzzle pieces together for me in my mind. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. I could talk more about like the clicks that come with my diagnosis process, but that's where I was having a moment of like, all right, I think I'm on the right path.
Now, you went through the diagnosis process as an adult. What
Mhm.
led you to seek answers in the first place?
That's a great question. I don't know if anybody else has experienced this. In fact, no, let me take that back. I'm sure other people have experienced this. I just didn't know that I wasn't alone in the experience. But I was struggling to do what felt like really basic tasks at work that, based on my success in school, based on my success with other things, I felt like I should be able to do this. Why am I not able? And it became this cycle of shame that, oh, well, I can't do this, or I'm struggling to do this, so I must not be capable, so I must be a bad employee, girlfriend, sister, so on and so forth. And it just became this really complicated spiral. And eventually I began to say, there's something wrong here. I, I, this association doesn't make sense and it isn't healthy for me. It's not fair. But it wasn't until I made an offhand joke to my therapist, I should say, where I said, sorry, wow, it just feels like a real ADHD kind of day. The squirrels are running. And she held up her hands and she said, all right, slow down. Why do you say that? I said, well, I don't know. I there are days I just feel like my brain is so loud and there's so many voices going on and there's so many train tracks or channels playing and I don't know how to slow it down. She went, ah, yes, I'm glad we got here. I think that you need to go have a conversation with your doctor about ADHD. And it was just this, what do you mean? I couldn't imagine having ADHD. Like that's not it. I just have a really loud head. But it was this pattern and um this moment of going like, oh wow, that's really amazing. But you're right. I've been struggling for so long and it's not fair to me. It's not fair to my loved ones who have to support me in my struggles. You're right. I maybe should go pursue something and see if there is something going on or if I can get help or if I can get support because I shouldn't have to walk through this alone. So that's kind of what prompted me to start that conversation.
You mentioned something very important, and that is you talk to your therapist. A lot of
Yeah.
people are afraid to go see one because it's
Mhm.
still thought as taboo to go see a therapist because it meant there's something wrong with you. But what people don't realize is more and more people today are seeking therapy because they're realizing it can help them more than it can it can help them in a way more than they think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I recommend it to everybody I talk to because you don't have to have something quote unquote wrong with you, but we exist in echo chambers in our
Mhm.
minds, right? Where we interpret what's coming through our system with our own kind of like set of funhouse mirrors. So they're distorted through our own experiences and perceptions. And it is so helpful and so clarifying to have somebody else be able to ask questions of you to help you examine experiences through a clearer window
Mhm.
and help you separate things that are really tangled in your mind. You don't have to be suffering immense trauma to go to therapy.
No, I mean, I didn't start seeing a therapist until I started going for my clinical trial. And
Mm,
I was, he was part of the whole trial, and I hit it off with him really good. And I said, if I'm going to see a therapist, I want it to be you because you know my backstory.
mhm.
And he was the one that when we talked, he's like, you stated that you feel more focused when you're doing things. Like when you're cooking, you're more focused on that. He's like, let's work on that. I'm gonna put you on Adderall.
Mm,
And he put me on Adderall and we worked together to get the right dosage. And I've only talked to him once that time, and then I went to my eye doctor and he's like, and my eye doctor knows him as well as my former doctor. And because he's like one of the best there was, and or is, I should say. And I went to my eye doctor and he's like, you know, Reed, it would be very good if you like set up an appointment, a regular appointment with him just for daily checkup. So I have set up with him to see him 4 times a year, not because there's something wrong, but
yeah.
because it helps to like talk to somebody about what's going on in your life. Somebody who
Mhm.
understands your background and your history, who can help you with things like sleep and emotional regulation and who understands how the neurodivergent mind works.
Right, right. Somebody who can help us understand the pathways of our mind
Mhm.
and how they can get crisscrossed or tangled up, or even how we can misconstrue or struggle to understand ourselves. I have found therapy to be life-saving
It
and
is.
beautiful when paired with the right therapist, when
Yeah.
paired with somebody who gets you. Um, and like you said, it doesn't have to be like something's wrong or something's gone terribly wrong or you've experienced something really traumatic. It can be, I just need somebody to talk to help me see myself more clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even before I saw a therapist, I had lost my father, and my mom was like, "You need to talk to somebody." And I didn't want to talk to anybody. I thought just talking to friends was enough. My mom's
Mhm.
like, "You need to talk to somebody," and I'm like, if I'm gonna talk to somebody, I'm gonna talk to somebody that knows autism. And I looked up life coaching and
Mhm.
what the difference was between a life coach and a therapist was. And a life coach is somebody that works from where you are to present, not backwards. And I wanted
Right.
someone that helped me move forward and not work backwards. And I found a life coach that I worked with for a while that got me to where I am today.
That's awesome. It's, this is not a life or an experience that anybody should go through alone.
No.
And to have somebody who can give you maybe the unvarnished truth, who can gently help you navigate things, who can, break it to you and give you the hard truth, whatever works for you, right? It's so crucial to have somebody in your corner like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, was there something happening at work or in your life that made you pause?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a breakdown, and I don't use that lightly. Um, I had a full-blown panic attack at work after I got a call from a family member and kind of snapped at them and upset them, understandably so. And they hung up on me. And I was under so much stress at work, and I couldn't, not because of anybody's fault, just because I had raised my hand for so many things. And I was under client pressure and trying to balance work, and then losing my emotional regulation at work was a moment of going, oh, okay, something is wrong here. I began to hyperventilate. I began to kind of get fuzzy sight. I broke out in a cold sweat. I had to call trusted coworkers into the room and close the door so that I could get somebody to calm me down. And I left work early that day. And my boss called and checked up on me. She brought me ice cream, but it was like in the couple of hours between going home, having my heart racing, feeling like I had a heart attack, still sweating, and eventually being able to calm myself, what, 4 hours later, was this revelation of, oh, I need help. I can't do this by myself anymore because clearly I'm not managing it well. If somebody hanging up on me was enough to throw me into a true spiral, I that means that I am too close to my triggers to be able to manage them. Um, and so that ironically, I that afternoon I went through, I began to research and study and look up therapy, and I got really lucky connecting to my therapist the first time, but it was enough to go, all right, Sammy, you can't do this by yourself anymore. It's time.
Did anyone around you notice before you did?
That I was starting to have a an attack.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually alone at work. I was in a conference room, so nobody saw it until I called somebody in, and they put the word to it. You look like you're having a panic attack. This is what you need to do. Um, but it had been a long time of my boss in many ways helping me emotionally regulate in short little bursts. We'd have a meeting once a week, and I would explain that I was really stressed or overwhelmed or, couldn't manage. And she tried to give me a tool or two, and I think she saw it coming. So she tried. She tried her best, but sometimes we have to hit the wall before we accept help ourselves.
Now, what was the emotional side of that diagnosis like for you?
Oh my gosh. It was a tough one. Um, I began to talk about the fact that I thought I had ADHD before I got the official diagnosis, and a lot of people didn't believe me. They said, "No, you're well behaved. No, you get work done. You're not bouncing off the walls. You couldn't have ADHD." And I was going like, well, the more you know, you realize that ADHD doesn't necessarily look like that, especially in women. And I remember being so nervous to get my diagnosis because I kept going, what if I'm wrong? What if I've imagined this? What if it's all in my head? And it wasn't. I had the call with the doctor. He said, yes, you have ADHD. It's a mild to medium kind of experience or case. But yeah, I would qualify you as having adult ADHD. And I remember bursting into tears. And this poor guy, I'm holding up the phone, I'm talking to him, and I'm snotty and crying, and I start apologizing, and he goes, "Don't worry, this happens more than you'd believe." But it was the emotional relief and understanding that, like I said earlier, I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a bad employee. I wasn't quote unquote bad or negative in any way, shape, or form. But nobody had taught me the tools to get around my brain. I had just been functioning and figuring it out on my own for so long. And it was this beautiful sense of relief and understanding and empathy for myself, if that makes sense. I think we as a people, but also the neurodivergent community in particular really struggle to give ourselves grace because we're expected to be neurotypical. We're expected to be able to do X, Y, and Z. We're expected to meet these markers of what is quote unquote normal. And if we don't, we're really hard on ourselves. So to have a moment of empathy for myself and to have a moment of grace was really cool and really relieving and helped me understand that I was so much more than my brain.
Would you say it was you felt relief, grief, or anger, or validation, or just all of the above?
Validation and relief for sure. Um, Anger came later. Anger came later for the situations that I had been in where I realized that I was experiencing ADHD symptoms or emotional dysregulation and nobody else saw it. Um, and then I had to give them grace as well because they didn't know either. So if I didn't know, how would it have been fair to be angry at other people who didn't know either? So it was a complex peeling of the onion, I guess.
Now, were there things from your past that suddenly just made more sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It made sense why my brain was so loud. My dad and I describe having multiple TV channels going on at the same time. And it
Mm.
was really validating to realize, like, oh, okay, so not only am I not alone because my dad has this as well, but I'm not alone, and there's a whole community of people who think like me. There's a whole wealth of other people who I can go to for other experiences, for tips and tricks and guidance. Um, it was this really cool moment. But yeah, I began to examine things that I'd gone through in my past, whether it was bullying, whether it was um, intense moments of hyper focus or something along those lines. And those puzzle pieces began to click into place.
Now, looking back, what do you wish someone had told you before or during that process?
I wish that somebody would have told me that my experiences were valid, whether or not I got a diagnosis. Like, I wish somebody had said, even if you don't have ADHD, it's okay if your brain still works this way. It's okay if you're struggling in this case. Let's just look at tools and let's look at supports that I didn't. Don't get me wrong, the label in and of itself, I'm somebody who finds that I really benefited from having a label, but I didn't need the label to go out and seek tools and support for myself. Um, so I wish I had known that to be able to advocate for myself a little bit more.
Now, what myths about neurodivergence did you have to unlearn?
What myths about neurodivergence did I have to unlearn? I think I had a very warped view of neurodivergence as um, something that was truly quote unquote wrong with you, right? That you were lesser than. And I will admit to having to really examine how I understood others and be really critical of my own internal thought processes and go, okay, this is a moment I need to call my own self out. I need to recognize that, wow, I need to have more empathy for other people and what they're going through. If I have been struggling in these ways, I can't imagine how people have been struggling in others. And it called me to have significantly more empathy for other people's experiences and try to not judge people on how they present or how they navigate something, but instead judge people on a blank slate and take into account what they may be going through and not interpret things with malicious intent or anything along those lines. So that was the myth I kind of think I had to unlearn.
What internalized narratives were hardest to shake?
Oh dear. That I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like I should be able to do something. I would have been able to do something. I could have done this. And this is something I'm still working on. I would say you can ask my therapist. I think laws probably prevent her from answering, but I still have conversations with my therapist today about, I should have been able to catch that. Or why didn't I focus more? Why didn't I tune in better? Why was I not better at something? And she has to constantly remind me, Sammy, you have ADHD. I joke, instead of having a doctorate, I get ADHD after my name. It's not a PhD, it's not an MD, it's ADHD. She has to remind me I have those initials. She has to remind me that I'm navigating other mental health challenges and diagnoses. So for me, it's still like I have to remember I do have limits and that I have tools to help me work around those limits, but I have to give myself grace. I have to give myself rest. And if something doesn't happen or doesn't happen the way that I want to, I have to be able to accept, pivot, and move on. It's hard to do.
No, let's talk about the workplace.
Yeah.
What's the biggest misunderstandings you see when it comes to neurodivergent employees?
I think a lot of people see neurodivergence in the workplace and they go, oh, great. It's another form of diversity. Like it's something else that I have to consider. In reality, it's something that we've been all navigating our entire life, right? Neurodiversity, when we get into definitions, encompasses all of us. We've all been navigating the world with people who think differently or process differently or just walk through the world, move through the world differently. And that's okay. Now, this is just our opportunity to pay a little bit more attention to it and be a little bit more purposeful in order to grade it, in order to get a greater return on our investment of time and energy. I think people see the fact that, neurodiversity or neurodivergence can fall under ADA and they go, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they go, oh my gosh, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to do, what do you mean you need an accommodation? And they panic because they think it's like this complex legal process. In reality, accommodations can be really simple. It can be just making sure to follow up with a written email. It can be giving somebody more time to complete a project, articulating deadlines in a different way, working with somebody, like if they don't prefer being celebrated in public, maybe it's celebrating in private, right? I don't think people understand that, like, we can make really small changes that have a really big impact and create spaces of safety and understanding that only lead to like better retention and tenure and output and all ROI and all of these other elements of it. So that's my goal in what I do, is trying to get people to understand, like, hey, you just need to sprinkle in a little bit of extra energy, or make sure this person has headphones, or allow this person to work remotely and look at what can come from it.
Now, where do you think those misunderstandings come from?
I think because we're all still human and we're all still learning, and we've heard maybe horror stories of something not working out, or where people have abused the system and it's turned out negatively, and so now we have a negative assumption of what it's going to be. I think we naturally as humans look for the worst in things because we're trying to protect ourselves from the worst in things. And so it's difficult for people to come into, whether it's the accommodations process, whether it's just a simple conversation, to come in with the best of intentions or the best of um, outlooks. And so I think it's that we're still trying to protect ourselves from pain.
Now, what assumptions are especially harmful even when they're well-intended?
What assumptions are particularly harmful even when they're well intended? If somebody processes slower, that does not mean you need to speak louder. We'll say that. Um, I've seen that occasionally. Um, I think I'll look at remote work, for example. I can see where, right, best of assumptions is that everybody works better in office because we're all better collaborators that way. That doesn't work out necessarily. Some of us thrive better in our home offices where we can control the lighting, the sensory experiences, our chairs, right? All of these little things that build up to overwhelm or sensory exhaustion or something along those lines. So I think like flat out policies that don't take into account other people's needs, while great in meaning, right? Trying to be fair, trying to be quote unquote equal. We're not in a society where everybody's the same. We don't live in a world where everybody's needs are the same. It's just not flat out policies like that aren't going to get us very far. So we need to build and write policies in the workplace that allow for flexibility and meeting other people's needs.
Now, a lot of workplaces say they value diversity, but
Mhm.
that doesn't always translate to accessibility. Where do you see the biggest gap?
So if we value diversity, but we struggle with accessibility, I think maybe it's because we don't understand what accessibility looks like and the barriers that other people are experiencing. Um, Accessibility, yes, when we think of accessibility in maybe the most common or most thought of sense would be like a wheelchair ramp, right? Wheelchair
Mhm.
ramp. There we go. I got it out. Or braille on an elevator, to make sure that people know what levels they're going to. Accessibility can also look like a screen reader for somebody who maybe navigates sight a little differently, who maybe works best auditorily rather than reading. And so they need a screen reader. It might look like headphones, even. I know we've already talked about them, but headphones for somebody who gets sensorily overwhelmed and allows them to work in maybe a more busy space. Um, Accessibility is getting down onto the person's level and understanding what are the barriers that the environment is putting on you. So there's an interesting saying that I'm learning and navigating in my own head. It's the fact that the person is not disabled, the environment disables them.
Mhm.
Keeping that in mind, what questions can we ask of the person to help better understand how we can support them? And I think that's where we're maybe missing accessibility.
Now, what does performative inclusion look like in real life?
Ooh, we've seen it. Performative inclusion is changing our logo come June and maybe not following through on making sure that we have the right kind of leave for parents, right? Whether it's maybe that leave is equal for both parents or that leave is flexible for both parents, something like that, right? I think today where we see performative actions in the neurodiversity space, it might be, um, like I said, those flat policies where it's the same for everyone, where we say we value accessibility and here's how we're going to do this. Um, Maybe where it's the accommodations process, they say, hey, we have absolutely an accommodations process and we're more than happy to go through it with you, but it's really complicated and really difficult to navigate. Um, or maybe where it's just a statement and we don't follow through. We don't actually ask each and every person, hey, how can I support you today? What do you need to do your best work? Um, and it's certainly not singling out our neurodivergent individuals and saying, do you have ADHD? Do you have autism? Well, you must need this or that. No. First of all, we can't ask that. And second of all, we can just, like we said earlier, get down on their level and ask the right questions.
Mhm. Now, what's one simple change that can make a huge difference?
One simple change that can make a huge difference. This is me dreaming. This is me hoping upon hope, right? This is a maybe not a simple change, but it might be a good change. I could see if we could simplify the accommodations process, or maybe even to the point where we don't need a really formal accommodations process. Now, I am not a lawyer. That is me hoping upon hope. And I recognize that there's like more legal elements that come along with, I'm not saying get away with the accommodations process. I'm saying if we can make it more accessible, make it a simple conversation with a manager, make it a simple submission request, make it in a way where it's not tinged with stigma and judgment and shame, but in reality it becomes this conversation of like, I'm so excited to help you. What do you need? How can I help you succeed? How can I help you thrive? I think simplifying the accommodations process in a lot of ways would be a huge change for a lot of people, and make it feel more like you are celebrating and advocating for yourself rather than admitting that something is wrong.
Now, from your experience, what does true accessibility at work actually feel like, not just look like on paper?
It looks like managers following through on what they've agreed to do. My manager was fantastic. I would say, hey, I'm really struggling with this element and I feel like I need support. And she followed through and then would find somebody to support me. She would pair me with team members with complementary strengths. She did not leave me as a to-do item on her list, but instead made sure I was taken care of. I think accessibility is not something that we can do on our own,
Mhm.
right? We cannot be siloed. Accessibility is, in a way, asking others for help. And we need to make sure that other managers, other team members are ready to jump in and support when appropriate.
Now, how does it impact confidence, productivity, or burnout?
Oh my gosh, hugely. It impacts productivity because, let's take the example of headphones, right? This was something that I needed in the workplace because we had an open office and it was busy and people were on the phone all the time. I needed headphones in order to focus to do my work. On the days where it was quieter or I had my headphones, I simply just got more done because I was able to focus. In the terms of confidence, right? If I knew that I could get through something, or if I'd done it before, if I had the right tools, I naturally felt more confident in my abilities and my ability to take a step forward. When I
Right.
know, or when somebody knows that they have support and that they're going to be heard, they're more willing to speak up and they're more confident in that case. And when we think of burnout is this cycle of almost futility, trying something and not getting anywhere and having to try again and hitting your head against the same wall over and over and not making a dent. Burnout can come from not being heard, from struggling in the same ways, from not being able to see a solution on the horizon. We can prevent burnout
Mm.
or at least slow the process, right? There are many factors and features that go into burnout, but we can make an impact in it by helping somebody feel confident and productive and giving them the tools that they need.
Now, what happens when people don't have to mask all day?
Oh, in my case, I slept better. When you don't have to mask all day, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation, right? You mentioned how you're constantly monitoring what's coming out of your mouth. And
Mhm.
I do the same. When we don't have to mask, when, for that example, right, when we're not worried about analyzing each and every word that's coming out, we naturally reserve a little bit more energy. We have a little bit, and that energy, if you think of it as like a domino effect, you reserve a little bit more energy. You then have energy to put towards other things that you need to be productive, or better yet, put towards activities and engagement that actually fills your cup rather than emptying it. Right. So it becomes this moment of like, I have a little bit more energy. I can go see my family and friends. I'm not consistently pouring from what is looking like a rapidly emptying cup. Um, and you also, when you're not masking all day, this is a little bit of an amorphous concept, so stick with me. When you're not masking all day, you are a little bit closer to your true self. You're a little bit closer to working in the way that your energy flows the best, in the way that your excitement flows and what brings you joy, right? That is a moment of, in my mind, a little closer to true happiness or contentment with ourselves. And that's something that I know I strive for a little bit each day, is that contentment or that happiness with myself. I think the closer that we get, the higher our overall satisfaction in life is.
Now, let's talk a little bit about self-advocacy and empowerment.
Yeah.
Self-ad self-advocacy self-advocacy can be hard, especially for people diagnosed later in life. Where do you
hmm
usually tell people to start?
Start small and start with the things that you have evidence for, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So, for example, I mean, it is so hard to go from undiagnosed and just trying to figure out your life to diagnosed, but then not having the answers, right? And not having the tools and not knowing how to support yourself. I think it's also very hard to say, congratulations, you're diagnosed. Now go advocate for all of these things that you need and this whole list of changes that you have to make. That's impossible. We have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So I would recommend for people to start with something small, like, hey, I need headphones. Hey, I would really benefit from an hour of quiet space for lunch. I would really benefit if you could follow up with me in an email. And just these little moments where you could be able to say, I need you to follow up with me in an email because my memory works best that way, and I'll be more guaranteed to get the work done. Uh, if I could have headphones and the workplace, it would help me focus on this particular data set that I'm trying to navigate and trying to process, and I could get it done sooner. It's important. What I recommend anytime we advocate for ourselves, especially in the workplace, is that we have a direct need. Hey, I need headphones. I need blue light glasses. I need a quiet space to work. We have it tied to a positive business result. I'll be more focused. I'll be more productive. I'll be able to get this done sooner, right? Something that the manager wants to hear. And then we have a specific call to action. Hey, I would benefit more from headphones because I really need a quiet space to work. That would really help me knock out this blog post in a quicker fashion and probably need less time for editing. Can I specifically reserve this conference room for 2 hours and just let me focus and get to work? If we follow that formula, it's easier to advocate for ourselves and it's more likely that we'll get a successful result.
Now, many of those people who see us trying to advocate for ourselves may look at it as being difficult. How do
Mhm.
we advocate without feeling like we're being difficult?
Is it a bad thing to be difficult? Is my
Not really.
question.
Not really, because it's how you get the point across.
Yeah, and I think there's an interpretation of difficult. You can make something as simple as possible. I mean, you could ask somebody to hand you the remote and they would say, "Well, you're being difficult because you have two legs and you could walk up and get it." That's that's not fair, and I think we're interpreted as difficult, and that might be on the person who's doing the interpretation. However, we can certainly make things simpler, right? Like the example of advocacy and tying it to a positive business result and making a clear ask. You could even make sure that when the time comes to request an accommodation, that you've got your paperwork in line, that you've read up on the process, and that you're following the exact examples. Or when you are asking for an accommodation, you provide examples of the accommodation that would work best for you and that you're flexible. Yeah, we can be accommodating and we can be kind and we can be professional in our approach, right? But I don't think there's any guarantee that we will not be seen as quote unquote difficult.
Right.
And to that point, everybody who's made a change and that change has benefited other people has likely been seen as difficult. Imagine what your accommodation request could do for somebody who has a similar need.
Yeah. Now, what's a small, low-risk way to practice self-advocacy?
Oh, sure. Small way. It could be as simple as just saying where you want to go for dinner and just speaking up and throwing out an option. It doesn't have to be accepted. It doesn't have to be picked, but you can try self-advocacy in that little moment. You can try self-advocacy in at work where you say you speak up in a meeting and you throw an idea out. You could speak for advocacy by simply requesting somebody follow up in an email.
Hmm.
You could set little boundaries for yourself or at work, right? Self-advocacy would be saying, no, I'm sorry, my workload is too full. Or I'm available until 5 p.m. today. I'm happy to work with you until then.
I think one of the biggest problems with like self-advocacy is a lot of times at work, I think they're afraid to say no, that
Mm-hmm.
they can't handle this because I think to somebody even who is not even non-neurodivergent, I think they see it as them showing themselves as not a team player and it comes off negative.
Yeah,
And then they're
that's fair.
constant and they constantly become a yes sir. And
Mm-hmm.
then they take on too much and then they wind up burnt out.
I found that there's a thin line to tread there, and it's a difficult one, right?
Hmm.
If it's somebody who's saying, "Hey, I need you to take on more work," you can say no, but it's like yes and, right? It's
Hmm.
no, but I'm happy to help you once I'm accomplished this. Or no, but I would be more than willing to work with Sarah on this project when I'm available, right? It's you can still present as a team player by offering them a solution that works for you,
Hmm.
but still establishing that boundary. Like, no, I'm not available until 3 p.m., but I'm happy to work with you after.
I
Yeah, it's
mean,
hard.
it is hard because when you look at it in the work environment, you want to be part of the team. You don't want to be the difficult one. You
Yeah.
don't want people seeing you as the troubled one, but you also want to show them, hey, I'm still willing to do the work, but
Hmm.
you got to give me some space in the leeway.
Yeah. And sometimes I know that not for everybody, like reading social cues isn't easy for everybody, or coming across as genuine or authentic isn't easy for everybody, right? Because we all operate naturally. Sometimes it's just making sure to say it with a smile,
Hmm.
or just trying to communicate that you would love to help within your boundaries.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you yourself deserve those boundaries, and you
Yeah,
can't be of help to anybody if you're burnt out.
yeah.
So you've got to protect yourself first and foremost.
Now, what is something you've had to personally advocate for that felt scary but was ultimately worth it?
I was suffering from burnout significantly towards the end of my tenure with my last organization. And I was burning myself out at both ends. I was burning the candle at both ends, I should say. I was the primary breadwinner at home. Um, I was suffering through major depressive episodes with bipolar 2. I was really struggling. And I had to go to my boss and essentially advocate for myself to have reduced hours or a part-time schedule. That was incredibly uncomfortable. I felt like I was not the team player. I felt like I was weak and all of these negative adjectives, like not capable, right? It really spoke to a lot of my insecurities.
Hmm.
But I had to remember that if I didn't take care of myself, if I didn't advocate for myself, things were going to get worse. There was no light at the end of the tunnel if I didn't begin to make hard decisions and changes and put the work in as well, right? Like it wasn't just the fact that I was just working part-time and it was going to be great. No, I had to work part-time and then take that time to genuinely rest or do some mental health work or meet with my therapist. Like it was hard. Um, and that truly was this moment of self-advocacy. And my boss was great. She was super accommodating. Um, but I certainly felt some questions or some side eyes from others. And I had to be secure in my choice
Hmm.
and in my advocacy for myself because I knew myself best and I knew what I needed.
Now, how did that moment change how you saw yourself?
I can do hard things, was my thought afterwards. But it was also this moment of, oh my God, I just took a step forward in caring for myself, and that was really hard. And it helped remind me that caring for myself had to come first, that I had unique needs. And yes, they were going to be different than my neurotypical peers, but it helped me take this moment of bravery and courage and take a step forward in caring for myself. That was really hard to do. And so now today, I am more protective of my mental health. I am more protective of my balance and my burnout because of that moment of being able to see myself as somebody who could take care of myself.
Did it change how others responded to you?
Yeah, it did. And I'm not saying it was necessarily for the better. I think in this is my interpretation. Nobody said a negative word to me because I work with a really truly I used to work with a solid team. I don't want this to be interpreted in any way, shape, or form. But I think in my mind, I began to worry that people were seeing me as not that team player,
Hmm.
or any of those negative adjectives that I was thinking about myself: bad, weak, incapable, a wuss, right? Like all of these really negative interpretations. And at the same time, I had to not care what other people thought of me. And that's the hardest thing to do. I think, really, especially for neurodivergent people, because we are spending so much of our time aware of what else is going around us and how other people are interpreting us. I, I had to not care. I had to say, that's fine. If people don't like the way that I work or don't think that I'm capable, that's not my problem.
Hmm.
I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm doing for myself. I know that I'm taking the right actions to care for myself, and
Hmm.
I've just got to move forward.
I mean, that reminds me of something a YouTuber once said about how does she handle negative comments. And she's like, the moment she stopped caring about what people thought of her is the moment she started living her life.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
and I tell that
beautiful.
and I tell that to everybody. You gotta stop caring about what people think of you because you're just gonna let it ruin your life if you do.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
only care about yourself and only yourself, and that's all that matters.
Easier said than done, but
Hmm.
once you get there,
Yeah,
it is life changing.
yeah. Now, for listeners who are thinking, I can't do this, my workplace won't get it, what would you want them to hear right now?
Ooh. So I'm going to call out some of my privilege. I recognize that yes, I'm a woman, so that puts me at a disadvantage in some spaces, but I'm also white. I'm cis presenting. You don't see my neurodiversity at the forefront of a lot of my experiences, right? Not only that, but I have a relative sense of self-confidence. I consider myself somebody who has to speak up for others, otherwise it's not going to happen. And so that would be my thought, would be at first, if you're not going to speak up for somebody else, who will? If you're not going to speak up for yourself, who will? It's really easy for me to say right now from my perspective and my position. So for those who are maybe struggling and think that their workplace won't get it, I would love to say that it's up to you to change it, but it shouldn't have to be. So I would say make your space yours as much as possible. Work within the boundaries as much as possible
Mhm.
and take those small moments of self-advocacy, small moments of micro bravery to continue to build a space that works. And if it doesn't work, this is difficult in today's job market. Maybe it's time to find another place that works.
No, that is so true. It's so hard to find a company that will respect the fact that you are neurodivergent and that will take and honor and help you get
Yeah.
what you need to be more productive.
That's the goal of the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah.
I work with organizations to help them create the spaces that are more accepting, accommodating, encouraging,
Mhm.
welcoming. I think we can get there.
We can't. I mean, one of my favorite interviews was I talked with the assistant minister of autism in Australia,
Oh, wow.
and she told me that what they had a story about how they had a grocery store out there and they had some autistic kids working, and they went and approached them and said, "Hey, can you keep the lights lower on one half of the store? And can you change the beeping on the cash registers?" And they said, "Sure, we can." And not only did it help the those that were neurodivergent, it increased their sales. They got more people coming in.
That's amazing.
That's what we need here is companies that
Mhm.
are willing to say, "Oh, we want to help those who are working for us because they'll be more productive."
Right. And we as a neurodivergent community are naturally more loyal and want to stay tenured, right? I'm not
Mhm.
somebody who loves a lot of change. I don't imagine there are a ton of people who do. There are some who love it, which is great. But imagine being able to find a place where you are accepted and encouraged. You are going to see neurodivergent populations put roots down quicker and deeper when
Yeah,
they find those kinds of environments, and they're going to stay longer and be brand ambassadors and be celebrators of the organization, right? They are going to be change makers and leaders in their own ways, whether it's managing people or showing up as an example or always committing to the best work, right? When you can find an environment that allows you to thrive, you're gonna stay.
yeah.
So there are so many arguments for neurodivergent inclusion and acceptance in the workplace. I don't know how much time we've got. That would be a very long conversation.
Now, how do you balance safety with authentic authenticity?
Like my own kind of safety with being authentic.
Yeah.
That's really hard. I mean, you heard me mention earlier today, I suffer from bipolar 2 disorder. Um, I also have ADHD. I'm having conversations with people about potentially OCD, right? There are a lot of things going on in my life that I've been warned not to share with people. I have found that safety comes first and foremost in gauging the audience and who will or won't respond to me in certain ways. Um, Disclosing when I feel appropriate. I found that you can still advocate for yourself without ever disclosing what you need, right? I could say, hey, I have natural cycles of high and low energy. I can let you know when I'm having a low energy cycle. I can let you know when I'm having a high energy cycle, but here's what to expect from me. Nowhere in that did I say I have bipolar. Um, I could say, hey, I really excel in quiet environments, but need a lot of variety. Nowhere in that did I say I have ADHD. So I can still advocate for myself and be authentic and let people know what I need without
Mhm.
being unsafe.
Now, what support systems make advocacy easier?
Oh yeah. Knowing that I've got a safe space to land at the end of the day. So my husband being incredibly accepting and willing to joke with me and willing to listen about what I need, but also structures to know, like, okay, if I need an accommodation, I know that I've got a manager, or I had a manager. I'm now my own boss today, so that's a little bit of a weird feeling, but I know that I could have gone to my manager and that she would have supported me through that space and helped me navigate the accommodations process. Um, what other structures? Part of it is the work that I had to put in to remind myself that I'm worth taking care of and that I need to be able to put some time into caring for myself and I need to be able to speak up for myself. Having a therapeutic structure and having professionals to support me who could see me for, what's going on and not how I interpreted things. So having
Mhm.
a good relationship with my doctor, with my therapist, with my psychiatrist. Um, there are a wide variety of structures, whether it's your friends, your family, your professionals, and you can talk about it in like rings of support structures or support circles. But um, yeah, I've got a lot that I've had to lean on today.
Now, as a coach, what patterns do you notice over and over again with neurodivergent adults in professional spaces?
Certainly what we've talked about earlier, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? The
Mhm.
I should have been able to do this, or why can't I do that? I think we have a lot of trouble separating our ability from our character,
Mhm.
right? And reminding ourselves that our ability as a human being is one thing, our intent and our hopes and our dreams and how we treat others is another. And if we focus on staying positive, inclusive, encouraging, welcoming, all of these really positive concepts, that is what defines our character, not our ability. So I see people struggle with that.
Now, are there common burnout cycles you see?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Are there common burnout cycles you see?
Yeah. Yeah, I see a common burnout cycle in the fact that people will maybe not feel accommodated or heard at work, right? And
Hmm.
so they'll burn out at one place. And they'll say, "Okay, it's time for a change." I see this with people with ADHD, but they'll say it's time for a change. I need something new, and they'll move to a new job. But what maybe they haven't done is they haven't done the due diligence in making sure that this is an inclusive environment. They haven't navigated the disclosure process with HR. They haven't um, asked the right questions in the interview to make sure that they are walking into an environment that is supportive. And so then they just kind of fall into the same trap where they're working really, really hard. They're actually pouring more out of their cup than they've got just to impress their new team. And then maybe even if it is a supportive environment, they just burn out even quicker. And then they burn out even quicker at the new job and burn out even quicker. So that's one issue is that whether they know how to, right, or not, whether it's disclosed or not, they may not know how to find the environment that works for them, but they also don't give themselves time to really recover. Burnout is not something that we can brush off or put in a box or just put on a shelf. Burnout has to be really taken care of. And if we don't take really crucial steps towards recovering from burnout, like resting, finding things that bring us joy, taking time to eat healthy and exercise, spending time with family and friends to rejuvenate ourselves. If we don't find ways to pour back into the cup before we start something new, we're just pouring from an even emptier cup that we don't really have much to pour from.
Now, what strengths tend to be overlooked the most?
What strengths tend to be overlooked
Yeah.
the most? Ooh, people with well, gosh, people with ADHD, people with dyslexia, any neurodivergent person, I think we have such creativity, right? We see things in so many different ways. We are so, um, I'm trying to think of another word for creative. We're so unique in the pathways that we take and in the questions that we form and the perspectives that we see. I think our creativity is really overlooked a lot because people just see us as different. rather than somebody who can bring about unique perspectives in the workplace or in our friendships or anything along those lines. I think we have really unique inside minds.
Mhm. Now, if employers are listening, what's one thing you wish they understood about neurodivergent employees?
I think what we said earlier today is that if you create the space, like think of the field of dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. If
Mhm.
you build an inclusive, welcoming, encouraging space, if you make accommodation processes easy and straightforward and to the point as much as legally possible, if you train your managers on how to be neuro inclusive or how to catch moments of somebody thinking differently and leverage those moments, if you build it, they will come. And you will get tenured, exciting, engaging employees.
Mhm.
You just maybe need to give them a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra space, and a little bit of extra balance. That flexibility goes a long way.
Now, what would actually help rather than harm?
What would actually help rather than harm?
Mhm.
Empathy. I think empathy, it's so funny. When I first started this business, I had all of these lines about empathy, and people kind of pushed back on it. And they were like, we don't really want to hear that. Empathy is hard. Empathy is kind of a trigger word right now in today's environment. It's not well understood, or it's weaponized, right? It's all of these things. Empathy in just these moments of saying like, wow, you do think differently, or like, wow, you do need something a little different, or, okay, you need a little bit of extra time, and just being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, I think would go a really, really long way.
Now, you mentioned empathy. How can leaders model empathy without overstepping?
Without overstepping. That's such a great question. um, I could see um, empathy is going to look different for a lot of people, right? Our needs are going to look differently just naturally based on the wide variety of who we are. Um, I think they model empathy by asking questions just to understand, getting creative, and curious. I think once upon a time, I was having a conversation with another the dyslexic maverick who is really awesome, and we talked about compassionate curiosity and just asking questions to better understand somebody. And so it's not overstepping to ask, how can I support you? It's not overstepping to ask, what do you need? Um, but making sure that you're asking that of everybody and that you're being equal in that approach, um, and trying to lead with that compassionate curiosity rather than as assuming malicious intent from your employees.
Now, how has embracing your own neurodivergence changed the way you see yourself today?
I have a lot more grace for myself. I also understand and separate myself, the core of who I am, from my abilities. Um, I think it's made me a more empathetic and kind person, both for myself and for others. I've been able to like check myself a couple more times in every day and say like, well, hold on, we don't know what this person is going through, or hold on, we don't know what this experience is. What if it was this, or what if it was that? And being able to just give a little bit more grace. But I see myself as a little bit more of this imperfect, creative, energetic at times, quiet at others, ball of joy and curiosity and snark. Let's throw snark in there as well.
Now, what feels lighter now?
What feels lighter? I still struggle with the shoulda, coulda, wouldas,
Hmm.
but I have more grace for myself in those moments. And I am I'm probably still harder on myself than I need to be, but I am less so now. I'm able to say, it's okay. If you didn't get that done today, we'll try again tomorrow.
What are you still learning?
Mm. Still learning how to leverage my strengths the best. I'm still learning to have some confidence in myself and to not let other people's voices influence what I'm trying to do or say. I think it's really hard not to listen to all of the external voices around us. And I'm just trying my best to listen to my voice, listen to my needs, and go off of that.
Now, if somebody is earlier on the path, maybe questioning, maybe newly diagnosed, what would you say to them as a fellow traveler?
You're going to be okay. Like, no matter where you land in the diagnosis process, no matter what answers come from it, you yourself are going to be okay. And you yourself are whole in your person. You, I'm not going to say don't need to change, right? We all change and grow. That's a natural part of life. But you are wonderful and whole and worth being seen and worth being heard. Your needs deserve to be met. Your questions deserve to be answered. And you deserve to put in the time and energy into yourself that others would.
All right. What's one truth you wish you believed sooner?
One truth I wish I believed sooner. I wish I believed the advice that I just gave in the last question sooner. I wish I had believed that I was deserving of help and care and that I deserved to take care of myself. I wish I had believed that I was a whole person and not fractured earlier.
All right. Now, what does success look like now compared to before?
Great question. Success used to look like being the most well regarded, being the most successful person at the company, having the most clout or rising up quickly in the ranks. Today's success to me looks like balance. Did I get things done? Did I move forward? But did I also rest? Did I find joy? Did I eat something that brought me happiness? Did I move my body in some way? I'm still not great at that, right? I'm still working on a lot of those things. But success no longer looks like being at the front of the room. It simply looks like being confident and secure in where I am and moving forward.
Now, before we wrap up, what's giving you hope right now when it comes to neurodivergence in the workplace?
Mm. Hope in general, can I just say the Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance? That gave me a lot of hope. That was wonderful. Uh, hope for
Yeah.
neurodiversity in the workplace. Um, I'm still seeing organizations come to me and say, hey, we do want to hear you. Hey, I know that we're navigating a really uncertain political time. We still value this conversation. Maybe we have to frame it a little differently. Maybe we have to look at things a little differently. Maybe we have to um, look at this as like, how do we support our managers? But we still believe that there's value in this conversation. And that gives me hope.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and get a hold of you online?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. They can find me at beyondnd.com, like beyondneurodiversity.com. They can find me on LinkedIn at Samantha Kelly. And you can always reach out at info@beyondnd.com.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Samantha Kelly. I'm Reed Miles, and I want to remind everybody You're never alone. Thank you, Samantha.
Mm. Thank you, Reed.